Is this thing in the way? Move that over. Okay. So the first thing you need to know is how big your grid needs to be. So if this was my image, I've chosen to do a 7-inch by 6-inch rectangle. That's the size that I need this to be. 7 inches this way, 6 inches this way on this sheet of paper. So it needs to be exactly the same. I don't know how you guys have been centering this. I'm just going to write the numbers up here. It's going to be 7 inches this way, 6 inches this way. So for a 7-inch height, I want to center that on this piece of paper. So the paper itself, some of you guys are working with bigger and smaller paper, but the same process applies either way. This is 17 inches. So I want, in the middle of 17 inches is where I want to center the 7 inches. And I'm just going to kind of show you 7 on here. So I want the 7 inches to basically center up in the middle of the page. So the center of 7 inches is 3.5. The center of 17 inches is 8.5. So I need to slide these 2 points till they line up. Does that make sense? So that will give me a centered 7 inches. So I'm going to make a mark at 0 on the ruler and a mark at 7. And now I've centered it this way, which is the height. It's a portrait. I'm kind of drawing it sideways so that it'll fit on the camera. But yeah, so 7 inches tall. Then I want this to be 6 inches wide. So I'm going to turn the ruler this way. The whole paper width is 14 inches. And the width that I want my rectangle to be is 6 inches. So half of 14 is 7. Half of 6 is 3. So I need to line these up. And then I've got a mark for 0, a mark at 6, and those are the 4 boundaries of my box. Now I think where some people are struggling is with keeping the lines straight and not having things get really wacky. The way you do that is by working with the edge of the table. So do you see how I kept my camera where you could see the edge of the table? That wasn't an accident. To make each of these marks into a line, I not only need them to be straight, but I need them to be perpendicular to the factory edge of the paper. So I'm going to hang off the side of the page, the table, and I'm going to line the paper up with the edge, this blue edge, and then I'm going to slide it till I find that point that I need, this one right here, okay? So I'm going to slide this over till I'm lined up with that. I'm going to make sure that the paper it's actually hanging off the edge of the page, and so is this ruler, this T-square. So when it's totally lined up, and it's lined up with this mark, I'm going to hold my fingers so that the paper is steady, and I'm going to make a line longer than I think I need. I can see these 2 marks. See, there's a mark here and a mark here. So I don't need to go all the way off the paper, but I want to make sure it's long enough. And then I've got one perfectly straight and square line. I'm going to keep rotating my paper and do that with each point. So I'm pulling the paper off the edge of the page. I'm getting that blue part, the T-square, to definitely be square with the paper, and I'm also lining the ruler up with this mark. Now I'm going to make this mark here, but I want to just be absolutely sure that I'm really getting 7 inches going this way. So I'm just going to double check, because when I go to draw that grid, I don't want to be off and have this weird row at the end. So see how this isn't quite at 7? I don't know. Can you guys see that? Depending on where the exact camera view is, where you want your eye to be is directly above that point. So when you look at this, you got to slide this over till it's exactly on the 7. That's how you know you're going to get all your 1/2 inches to work. And then you can push this ruler up against it. You still have to make sure that the blue part is square as well. So you're lining up a few things here to make this work. Okay, and then while I've got the ruler here, I might as well mark my my lines, my grid, right? So every 1/2 inch, I've got to make a mark. Make sure you're on inches and not centimeters. So I'm just making a little mark the whole way down. Every 1/2 inch. Oh, that wasn't a 1/2 inch. And then the final mark, which is important. Okay. And then I'm going to turn this again. I've got that other mark that I made, remember? So again, lining up with the edge of the paper. Also lining up with the mark. There it is. Double checking, since this is my final boundary line, double checking, am I exactly on 6 inches? Not exactly. I'm going to slide this over. Again, I don't know how well you can see that little detail, but I'm going to slide this over so I'm exactly on 6 inches. I'm going to slide the T-square over to match up with that, and I've got to make sure it's square again. And I'm going to mark every 1/2 inch. Since the ruler's already here, I might as well. 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch. Doesn't matter where you do it. If you do it along the middle or up at one of the edges. I kind of like doing it in the middle because I actually think it helps with accuracy. Oh, no, I did it. I moved my hand. Okay. And I'm going to finish that line. So now I've got a square, and what I mean by square is not, 6 inches by 6 inches. I've got something that's square to the original piece of paper on all sides. Now I need to make sure, one of the complaints I heard you guys making is that the lines are getting crooked. So here is the only, I'll tell you 2 ways. The only ways I know to keep those ruler lines, those rows, straight. You've already marked every 1/2 inch, and you're going to use this T-square again. Keep it lined up with the edge of the paper, and at every mark, when you know it's completely square, you press your hand down and you draw the line. You slide it over and you do the same thing again. You've got to make sure it's square. And you draw that line again. If you lean your hand the other way, you can make a completely different line with the same ruler. Do you see how different those 2 measurements could be? Do you see how far apart those 2 lines are? So you need to be consistent with yourself and always make sure that you're leaning that line into the ruler. If you're leaning on this side, you might not be able to, it might be more awkward to turn your hand and get, into the ruler. So make sure you're drawing in a way you know, with an angle. Oh, I just erased all my 1/2 inch marks there. But make sure you're drawing in a way that you're not changing the angle that your pencil's going. So I'm still just shifting over. Next line. Okay, so that's one way to do it. But if you absolutely know that you've been very careful and that this line is not crooked, you know, none of these lines are crooked, you can also use the triangle. So you can line up the bottom of the triangle with the bottom edge of the box. I think this is harder, actually. I think it's a little harder to do it this way and keep it accurate. But you can line up there, draw your line, slide over to the next point, line it up. Draw the line. Now as you get to the end, you don't have as much to line your ruler up with. So at some point when you get past halfway, you should really rotate your ruler your triangle. If you're using the triangle, you should rotate the triangle the other way so you have more edge to line up with. Does that make sense? Oh, that was not good. Did you see how that moved and leaned because I didn't really have my hand on the ruler? Let's try that again. I saw it move. So when I get it lined up, I'm going to just press my hand a little better. There. See, that was a kind of a big difference.
Hello, Mommy.
Hello, Ava. What are you working on?
I don't know my iPad is.
Your iPad? For drawing?
Yeah.
It's back in your room on the bookshelf.
Okay.
Okay?
What is this? Is it a dinosaur?
That is a rat. It's a rat skeleton. It's a Halloween decoration. Okay, and then when you've done all of the columns, you can rotate your paper and you can do the rows. Now I erased, I accidentally erased some of these marks, but I can still see them. So going across, this would be a huge mistake. What's wrong with what I'm doing right now? I need it lined up where I have something to actually confirm that the line is square.
Let's draw on here.
Baby, I am teaching. You're going to have to go back upstairs.
Let's draw.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Oh, Ava, here it
I
is.
like this process a little better. Uh-oh.
Come on, let's take this with us.
Hey, her drawing pad is upstairs on our bookshelf.
Oh, okay. This one works too. You want to do this one?
Is that the
Ava?
blue one?
With great turquoise.
And then there's the empty ball in the telescope.
We'll bring that up the stairs with us and we'll draw on it together.
Yeah, can you get markers and draw them?
Come on, we'll find some markers.
So you see how those rows are starting to, or columns are starting to show? I'm going to skip to the other side just so you can see a little easier as I shift them over.
We've got some people upstairs.
Now you saw that video that my dad did, and he was absolutely right. If you're going to make a mistake, it probably makes sense to make the same mistake. Then it won't really mess up your painting. So I think it's a great idea to draw this grid, the way he demonstrated in the video with the transfer paper and the photo on top. So you're drawing the grid on the photo exactly the same as the paper. Now, if you have Steph, that if that was your only photo and your grid is off on the photo, maybe you need to just trace the grid that's on the photo onto a piece of paper. Does that make sense? I don't know if that's the best idea, but I think it, could work.
Yeah, my the photo grid is like so wide that it wouldn't even make sense.
It's pretty wide. It's like it's half an inch on one side, but not the other. Be careful, guys, as your paper scoots. If you accidentally scoot the paper up, you might be lining up with the table. Oh, you can't see this. You might be lining up with the table and your paper could be off. So, something that happens to me sometimes is I get it lined up with the table and then the paper scoots a little bit. So make sure you're always getting it lined up on that edge. And that's why I hang off the table, because I feel like otherwise I get in the habit of trusting when I hit the edge of the table, and then my paper could be anywhere. All right, so there's the grid. What do you guys think about that? Does it make more sense? Do you have questions about how it happened? All right. Well, do you feel like you can do that? Go ahead.
So this picture, this one I used before I did the tracing on it.